Good evening. Welcome to the Margaret Alkick Williams Dance Lab for our second dance talk of the season. I am incredibly honored to get to be on this side of the conversation this time with the most incredible panel of artists that you have to bear with me as I introduce them because they truly deserve the most proper introductions as possible. First to my left, I mean, you probably assume who everyone is, but for the sake of formality, is Arthur Pita. Arthur Pita is an award-winning choreographer, director. He is Portuguese and was born in South Africa. He studied at Johannes Art Ballet, Drama, and Music School. He moved to London in 1991, where he trained further at the London Contemporary Dance School, gaining a master's degree. He's worked as a professional freelance dancer and then joined the Matthew Bourne's New Adventures. In 2003, Arthur pursued his career as a choreographer, and thank goodness he did. Arthur has choreographed for prominent ballet companies and ballet stars across the globe. Just to name a few, the Royal Ballet, the San Francisco Ballet, the Paris Opera, Ballet Black, and many, many more. Also working with ballet stars such as Natalia Osipova, Ivan Vasiliev, Wendy Whelan, James Whiteside, Maria Kurowski, Sarah Lamb, Robbie Fairchild, and I could go on for the whole hour if I chose to. So a really incredible, incredible artist. Please welcome Arthur Pita. Next to him, we have Marco, our designer, costume designer. Marco is an Emmy-award winning costume designer. Yes, I said that correctly, an Emmy-award winning costume designer. He studied theatrical design at the California Institute of the Arts. After graduating in 2002, Marco and his partner, Chris, how would you say? Pasila, opened their studio in Hollywood and began working around the world creating costumes for commercials, television, concerts, and music videos. His fashion shows have logged millions of views online and have become the backbone to a 20-year career, bringing inclusivity, engagement between major industries and the LGBTQIA and beyond community he proudly calls himself a part of. Marco has designed for American Idol, RuPaul's Drag Race, Fergie, The Black Eyed Peas, Lil Wayne, Keisha, Selena Gomez, Britney Spears' Vegas residency, Ringling Brothers' Barnum and Bailey Circus, incredible. And Marco has also appeared on Next in Fashion on Netflix, I Am Britney Jean on MTV, and Nicki Minaj, My Time Now MTV, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. I'm drying my mouth out already just talking about all your wonderful CVs. Please welcome Marco. And to their left, I'm sure they need no introduction to this audience, but we must because they're wonderful. We have Karina Gonzalez, the Houston Ballet Guild principal, dancer who joined Houston Ballet as a soloist in 2010. And I've had the pleasure of dancing with a couple times over her time here. Prior to that, she was a principal with Tulsa Ballet, and she will portray the role of Blossom in Good Vibrations. Please welcome Karina Gonzalez. And next to her is a very exciting and charming Chandler Dalton, who is a student of the Academy and also a member of HB2 before joining the company in 2016. He was recently promoted to soloist, and he will perform the role of Ryan in Good Vibrations. Please welcome Chandler. And now for the fun part for me. I would like to start with you, Arthur, because I feel like it's hard. When I get to know an artist's work, I want to get to know the artist as well. So I would love for you to give us a little backstory, just on yourself, your early memories of dance, and what sort of led you to create your own dances.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's okay. Hello. It's very nice to be here. Thank you, Connor. My earliest memories, or I think the motivation, definitely goes to John Travolta. When I first watched Saturday Night Fever, not even Grease, it was Saturday Night Fever, and I was really young, and I was just obsessed with his attitude and his passion for moving and just the way he moved, and particularly the music of that period. And then when Grease came out, it went like even further. because then it was sort of even cooler. So, and there was a local dance school offering disco lessons, and so I went along with my sisters, and we learned disco dance and then Latin American and ballroom, in which I partnered my sisters. And then that's really where it really started. And then towards my teenage years, I started becoming more curious about other art forms. And I went to the Johannesburg Art Ballet Drama and Music School. And there it was when I started to get more formal training with ballet, contemporary, flamenco, and Greek dance. And I had a very influential contemporary dance teacher, Sonia Mayo, who really was, you know, the person who showed us all of the videos, who told us about what was going on in the world of dance and choreography. And she was herself a great choreographer and made great works on us. And that was really what inspired me to then go to London to study at the London Contemporary Dance School.
And when did choreography start to enter your focus? I mean, was it something that was always there, or was it a slow burn and that as you went through your dancing career, it started to slowly happen?
I think I was always sort of directing and creating. So when I was a little kid, what I really wanted to be actually at one point was a magician. And I would, I had like a hocus pocus set and all of that, you know, those little magic boxes, and obsessed with David Copperfield. And I used to me and my cousin used to do a show for the family, and I would, you know, have like an empty box of matches, and then he would be under the tablecloth, hiding under the table, and I would show that the matchbox was empty, then shake it, and he would shake it with a cue. And so I was already kind of, you know, directing things and wanting to entice an audience. And I would dress up my cousins in, you know, what my mom's wardrobes, and I would create like looks on them and devise little sort of little shows and choreograph little numbers. So I think it was already starting from a very young age.
I mean, amazing that you say you're a magician, because when I watch your works, I do see magic all the time. There's always magical elements. I have, in preparation for this, I spent a lot of time digging around your website and watching all your dances, and I recommend everyone to go home tonight and do the same, because there's so many wonderful things. And something that I notice is that every dance is so different than the next one. You know, there's such a variety of ideas, and always such strong concept, right? Such imagination. What compels you to keep making these different dances? I mean, I could look at each one and they're all so different.
Yeah, you know, I feel like when it comes to choreographing, if I don't know why the human beings are doing it, then it doesn't come. Then I feel very stuck. But the moment that I know that there is a situation, or there's that there's something that is evolving, and something that there's an arc, and that there's a dramaturgical logic to what's happening, then I feel like the movement and the ideas just flow. And then you can be overflowing with movement. But if it's trying to create something that's come from nowhere, then I get quite lost. So I do like to think heavily about the concept and where it's coming from and why they're doing it, so that it's so also that the artists know what they're doing, but also that the audience understand what's going on. Because for myself, I feel I don't like being in the audience and feeling perplexed or left out of a creation that I'm watching that I don't feel like that I can't relate to.
And you've been involved in a lot of theater as well. I mean, I constantly see that you're directing projects as well as choreographing projects. How has that influenced your process? And could you start to talk a little bit about your process of when you start to make a dance, such as Good Vibrations? Where do you start? Where is your beginning process? Particularly for this one, is it, you know, was it surfing? Was it Beach Boys? Or is it, you know, where does it begin?
Yeah, so this was supposed to happen in 2020, so we were already thinking about it 2018, 19, and then of course we all know what happened to the world. And I feel like, so I had another plan for Good Vibrations, and really it was going to be something, I guess a lot more almost like a ballet fantastique, you know, with kind of like hinting at situations. But it was really going to take the song and kind of explore it orchestrally and play with it, and so that we would live in this kind of kaleidoscope world. And then I guess we went through a long time of staying at home and feeling isolated and feeling and thinking a lot about the world, and everybody went through many different situations. And when I was working with the composer, and he kept saying to me, you know, because we were going to like, you know, create the whole score during lockdown. We thought, this is great. We've got loads of time. And then he was struggling and saying, I don't quite know, like I need some high moments and some low moments, and is there any more story? And I kept going, well, no, not really. The point is that we just want to make this sort of 25 minutes of elation. And then it came to me, and I started thinking about it, and I started looking at the lyrics of the song, and I started thinking that that there could be more of a narrative there, and then the narrative started to develop. So once I had developed that in my head, and then I proposed it to Marco and to Chris, who was doing the score, and they said, oh, okay, let's go for it. Then it became clear what it was. Then I feel like I can go into the room, and I can then set the tasks and start to develop the characters and start to develop the world, the juxtapositioning world of what the piece is. In terms of process, I feel like each piece has a different process, but I feel like with this one in particular, I've had a very cathartic experience, not only because we've had so long to think about it and to allow the thing to evolve, but just the whole, every little bit of research has come, and the ideas have flowed from one into another, so in such a fascinating way. So I feel like I've been fully immersed, you know, for example, there's a lot of wave theme in this, and I've been thinking a lot about waves, and I've been researching, and then we've had the creative process where we create the piece for 4 weeks, and then there were 2 weeks off, and I didn't quite know what to do in the 2 weeks, and I thought to myself, well, I could just go back to London, but that would be a little bit boring, and I'm in America, so I should go see America. And then I thought, well, actually, why not go to Hawaii, which is where surfing started, where it was invented by Hawaiians. It's an ancient, beautiful form that was invented by Hawaiian fishermen. So I thought, well, that would be quite beautiful, and then maybe I can actually learn to surf myself. So I did go there, which kind of allowed me to stay connected with the piece, but to have a deeper connection. So that wouldn't normally happen, that there's a 2-week break in the piece, and also to sort of go somewhere and sort of stay in the world of it a little bit.
That's amazing. Now that we're talking about the birth of this idea, let's let Marco kind of bring you in. And I want to ask first a little bit about, just to get a little of your backstory. And so just before you start working with Arthur, what in your career, what has led you, because you have such an incredible range as well, from working with drag queens to pop stars to underwear lines to ballet dancers, what has led you to do the style of work that you've done, which is so many different things? And then would you mind segueing into getting a call from Arthur?
I mean, I think for me, it's just been a journey of finding what it is that I do, you know? And so in that process, just sort of saying yes to every opportunity that came along. And through that process, you know, you find yourself in situations where you don't know what you're doing more often than not, and the discoveries that you make in the process of learning to do what it is that you don't know what to do, you learn a little bit more about your own design style, and you know, you find pieces that you love, and you find things that you don't love, and that's how it grows. And I've always loved the concept of just throwing myself into something, and especially the types of things that where there's space for my input. You know, I think starting in commercials and TV and stuff, a lot of the work that you do, as creative as you may think you are, they don't really want that from you. They just want you to give them what they want. And so I think through that process, I found myself looking for more and more artistic venues, and it just so happened that Arthur and I kind of like, he found me somehow, and 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 we had an incredible process of design together. You know, I love being helpful. Like, I'm not a person who necessarily has the story to tell, but I find that I'm very good at helping tell the story. And so if there is someone like Arthur, or like one of the dancers, like to me, those become like the reason to do something. You know, she needs to be able to move a certain way, he needs to be able to hold her a certain way. These become elements for me that I can incorporate into like a design. You know, that there's a certain type of music, or there's a certain type of, you know, desire that needs to be reached, and I feel like that's where I thrive the most, is in this problem in the process of solving other people's problems.
I love that, because so often when we're working with designers from different genres, we deal with the challenges of, well, I have to do this, I have to move them, I like that way, and that's like their least favorite part of it, but you welcome that challenge. You've done a lot of dance design in music videos and things like that. Are there unique challenges to coming into the ballet world with Arthur that have presented that you've enjoyed?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always, whenever you go into something that has like a long history to it, you're gonna have a lot of things that people expect. And you know, when I did the circus, all of a sudden I'm working with, you know, generational families of contortionists, and they have certain things that they need and certain things that they absolutely can't have. And so, you know, it's always a learning process. It was the same with the ballet. And for most of those things, I try to defer to the artists. You know, obviously they're the ones that are, I always say, like, I don't have to wear it, you do, so you tell me what you need and then I'll try and make it pretty.
I wish every designer had that mindset.
I mean, I love the idea that it's a process, you know, and that's, I think, one of the great things about Arthur is, you know, I think at certain points through this process, we may have known the same amount about what was going on, even though it was in his head. He was still developing it, and that sort of attitude allows me to interject, you know, my thought process, and you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I think it's a really holistic way of dealing with the pieces in its entirety, you know.
I'd like to kind of take a step back, because we've been talking about it broadly. Do you think you could give the audience a little bit of a synopsis, or at least as much as you're willing to reveal without the audience having seen the piece yet?
Absolutely. So, I mean, really, okay, it's a hard way to know where to start. But, I mean, I started looking at the lyrics of the song, and then I also started to look at the history of the Beach Boys. And there was also a documentary that has just come out about Brian Wilson, which is called The Long Journey, which is a fantastic documentary. And it's kind of amazing that he's this survivor. So in a way, I wanted to put all of that in. Also, we had just lost my grandmother during COVID. She didn't, surprisingly, I mean, she had amazing, lived for 93. So, I mean, that was all part of life, and amazingly, she did get COVID, but didn't actually die from it, which is incredible. But anyway, I started thinking about, you know, a dignified passing when one gets to a certain age, and you are, you know, your family are preparing for your death, and also what starts to happen, because I've been very close to people, you know, when they've been, you know, almost dying, and there's often things that start to happen in the head. People start to have visions, they start to see people from the past, they start to reminisce the past, they kind of go back, and you know, I think it's like obviously being in and out of morphine, there's all sorts of things, and I think you're processing something. So I was quite fascinated about that. So the lead character is called Ryan, and he's this old man on his deathbed, and his family are visiting him, and we know that it's maybe the time is coming soon, and he starts to have these memories, these flashbacks. So it's really ideally a memory piece, and he goes back to one of his first memories was when he was on the beach as a boy, and he meets this girl, a surfer girl. And I was also particularly fascinated about female surfers because, you know, it's often seen as quite a male-dominated form. and actually there are some amazing surf women out there, incredible women, and so I thought that would be a really fun thing for him to do. So he meets her, and there's this instant love, childhood sweethearts, and she teaches him how to surf. And that's first memory. And then we kind of evolve to the characters later on when they are Chandler and Karina, and they're kind of characters in their late teens, early 20s maybe, and she gives him a gift, which is a surfboard, and they go surfing together. And unfortunately, they get caught up in the power of the ocean, and she drowns. And this is actually, it's quite interesting because one of the Beach Boys, one of the brothers, actually drowned himself, and and I've always been fascinated. It always seems like a very poetic way to go when you read about it. The whole process that the body goes through it's a very different kind of passing. So that happens. So the old Ryan in the bed is reminiscing that, and then eventually he passes, and then we get to his soul rising, I guess, which is the young. I hope it's going to be clear. When I explain it, it sounds complicated, but it will be clear. So basically, the young Ryan comes out, and then he goes to I guess the question is, what does happen when you die? So in my head, what would happen if it was your favorite place and your favorite memory, and maybe for this character, it's 1966 when the song came out and he reunites with his love. And it's the union of these two souls, and that was the place that I wanted to get to the song. So in a way, the piece is playing with different, there's the reality, which is like now, 2022, and then there's the memories which are 10 years apart, 1956 and then 1966, and then we go to places of beyond which we don't know, which we can only imagine. And that's where it is. I mean, there's a lot about light as well. I've been talking to Lisa, the lighting designer, and often if you just Google it and people talk about, because some people who have died and then come back, and there's some great stories about that. But like 90% of them always talk about a light that came, and then somehow they were pulled back. So we're very interested in that dynamic and those bigger philosophical questions, because ideally the song is really a fun song that Brian Wilson wrote, and he wrote it because when he was younger, his mother, he had asked, a dog was barking at someone aggressively, and he asked his mom, why is that dog barking at that person? And his mom said, because that person's got bad vibrations. So when he grew up, he reversed it, and he said, why don't I write a song called Good Vibrations? So then it became about a woman that kind of gave them, and you've got to think of 1966, someone who has so much power, I guess, and spirit that, and you look at the lyrics of the song, I do see her as some kind of light. So I thought it would be good that she's almost a spirit.
I have one more question for Marco before I bring in our beautiful dancers over there. Could you talk to us a little bit, because this is not just, there are surf scenes and there are people, but we also go to a land of a mystical place. We go through psychedelic worlds. Could you talk a little bit about the conversations and your inspirations for the different designs that are involved in this piece?
Yeah, I think for us, the first thing that I remember Arthur telling me about the piece was that he had this 3-minute song, or whatever, Good Vibrations, he was going to stretch it over 30 minutes. And so my first vision of it was this idea of stretching, this idea of taking something and, pulling it like taffy and being able to see the different shapes that happen when that happens. And so I wanted to take the realism of the original scenes and then slowly throughout the piece build upon those designs, pulling on different parts of the outfit, stretching the designs, and creating sort of a more abstract version of each of these characters. And I think also, I think one of the beautiful concepts that I see in the piece is this idea of like longing and the unrequited longing. And you meet this old man who has a beautiful family with him, who's there to see him off as he passes, and even still, with all of the accomplishments that this man must have done in the last 80 years, he goes back to this love of his life that he lost when he was a child. And I think that's really sad and beautiful. And I think like that's the kind of love that you see like in a mother's eyes when she looks at her child, knowing that no matter what, she's gonna have to part with this person at some point. You know what I mean? And so, coming from the perspective of Ryan, I wanted to, take this sweet, innocent young girl and I guess distort her into, like, deify her, so that by the time, he's been waiting 80 years to reconnect with this love of his life, and at that point, whatever she is, he's gonna see her as this gem, this sparkling, thing that he's been trying to get to for so long. And so I think in that sense, we've just sort of taken simple concepts of, angels and ghosts and different forms of otherworldliness and tried to impose those upon like her original costume. And that's it.
I will say, and if anyone's feeling like the story is complicated, I watched a full run just a couple weeks ago, and the story reads so clear, and you are immediately living and transported with these people's emotions. So I'm really, it is truly wonderful. So Karina, let's bring you in here. I'm always excited and nervous the first day of working with a new choreographer that I've never worked with. You don't know their style, you don't know their pace, you don't know what methods they want to use to create works and the energy, all of it. There's so much uncertainty. Could you bring us into the studio, especially those first few days working with Arthur, and what that was like, your first impressions?
Yes, so we have been waiting for so long. It's been more than 2 years waiting to work with you. So I feel like I did a little bit of my homework. I will be like, looking online, and I saw the last one was the San Francisco Ballet. So, and I read a lot of the critics than other places will do. So I know you like to work with narrative and strong visual effects and a little dark sometimes. So I was very nervous to see where you were going to take us. But I have to say it has been one of the most lovely experiences. I think it's in many ways. First, your positive and beautiful energy in the studio has been amazing, so I have to say that. But also it's just the way that from day one you created this atmosphere in the studios, that you will bring a clear vision of your story. I think one of the things that I love the most is that he will start the rehearsals with videos, like YouTube videos about people from the 1960s, so how they will walk or how they interact to each other. Even just talking about the waves, the ocean for me is something that I respect. That's a secret, now you know. So you have taken us to, especially personally, places that I always been afraid to go. So like we will watch videos of amazing surfing festivals, or one of the most, like the higher waves. And so for us, it was easy to understand your vision. So I think as a collaborative process, it was so easy. I found it so easy compared with my other experiences. And I feel like I was so open to just experiment, and I wasn't afraid, I wasn't scared. I wanted more. Like every time you would say something, I would just go for it, because I think you open a beautiful atmosphere in the studio that I have enjoyed from day one.
And I hear that from everyone who has interacted both of these people, that they are just, the warmth in their hearts and their kindness is just bled through the company, which is wonderful, really wonderful. Chandler, so Karina kind of set it up perfectly. Every time I would look in the studio, you guys would be, there would be some sort of improvisational exercise, there would be some video research, there was a lot of conversation happening. One of a dancer's, particularly ballet dancer's biggest fears is improvising, right? That's just not something we have a lot of experience in, not something we've been educated in very well. And choreographers like Arthur ask us to improvise. Could you bring us into that process, what that was like for you, and how that, perhaps how that changes your relationship to the work, since you have been, it's a collaborative atmosphere?
Yeah, I remember our first duet rehearsal. We did this exercise that Arthur gave us where we just touched our fingers together and moved around with our eyes closed, around the studio. And I've never done that exercise before, but it felt like I was connecting my energy with Karina and feeling movement sort of in a different way. And that because it was in our first rehearsal, it sort of made me feel comfortable with just experimenting. And Karina says, he creates such an amazing atmosphere and positive way of being able to create without judgment. And it was sort of like that also with our solos, and he would give us an idea, and I don't know, because the narrative and the idea of the piece was there, it just helped to sort of figure out who this character is and what kind of movement, how would I be acting, how would I be interacting with the environment, how would I be interacting with other people. Yeah.
And there's also every day I would walk into the studio, first there was a little poster board with some pictures on it, and then I'd walk in and there's this giant poster board with some pictures on it. There's constantly references and research. Could you bring it, what are some of the things that Arthur was bringing into the studio for you guys to use as tools?
Yes, so I actually didn't know that you have this giant board, and he will color the sections that he has finished, which I think that was amazing, because we will actually go and check the board to see how the process was going. So I thought that was fantastic. And but yeah, I have to say that it was so interesting what you say about improvisation, because I personally struggle with that. But I feel like I was so clear of the vision that you had, and then it helped with that collaborative process. I have to say that also it feels that it's kind of also our piece, because it's our steps are there, and it was never a no, and I found that fantastic. You never used, oh, that's no that step. You were always yes, but more. Oh yes, but later. It was just I found that so inspiring to work with.
I think that's one of the amazing things about Arthur's process in general, is that he's, a lot of people who are in the director position will try and impose their vision upon the players, whether the actors or the designers. And Arthur is smart enough, I think, clever enough to find ways to incorporate all of the pieces of that person. And like she said, a lot of times dancers aren't going to give you all of that. They're going to reserve themselves and give you what you ask for, and what he's asking for is them. And I think he gets a lot of really interesting new stuff out of that.
When you go into a process, you really want to use all the brains in the room, and dancers are, my body doesn't do what it used to do. I've got a bad hip now on the shoulder. I can barely even demonstrate because the shoulder pulls. So I have to say, oh, this arm, if I want this. So if you're making the movement from your body, it's not going to be on the level of intelligence because it's not exploring in the same way. I'm now adapting with my own body certain things. I'm not free. So it needs to come from the brains in the room. So I always say on day one to everyone, I just have two rules. The first rule is that you can try anything in the room, because any idea, a good idea or a bad idea, just voice it. That is the one rule. And the second rule is communication. If you feel unclear, or if you feel like you are not comfortable, or you don't like me, or you don't like the person next to you, just come tell me so I know. Because sometimes dancers are going through certain things in the room. Sometimes a dancer might have an injury or be in pain, and the choreographer, you don't know, and you think, oh, they're having a terrible time. So it's just nice to know that when someone goes, and then they do, and they come and tell you, they just say, that something's wrong with my now and then I'm going, oh, okay, I now know what's going on, or I've got a headache, or there's stuff going on at home, so I'm not quite, and then it's just, there's a clear communication, which is good. So that's the environment that I really like in the rooms, that people can come in and they can feel free. And if there's a way to solve something, you can look at 5 different options, because there's a big menu of choice.
Incredible. I have to, before I get to the Q&A, I have to talk about the surfing in this piece. I have to go there, because I'm sure you've maybe seen some pictures up there of them surfing. There's a slideshow above us. I don't know what's showing. But first of all, that idea that there's so much elevation in this work, right? I mean, that's as soon as I walk in, oh my, I've never seen Karina so high, and I lift her all day long. Incredible. So such imagination to not just say, okay, it's a surf vibe, but we're surfing and we have waves and we have how we're surfing, and we're not just surfing in a straight line on wheels, right? That would be my idea. Somebody pull a surfboard across the stage. No, you took it to a 3-dimensional place that I am so excited for you all to see. Could you talk a little bit about how you got there, and then I would love to know what that was like, because it looked both terrifying, exhilarating, exhausting, all the things.
So I got excited about the idea of surfing because I've always loved it, and I've always loved watching it. And I thought, oh, that would be, and of course, the Beach Boys are the soundtrack to California and surfing. So in a way, you can't do something with the Beach Boys without having that imagery. But even interestingly enough, they weren't really particularly interested in surfing and girls, but they were told to write about surfing and girls. So in a way, it's just become part of their repertoire. But there's a deeper. I wanted to try and find the deeper connection. So first of all, when you watch a lot of documentaries, it's just like Karina said, the power of the ocean. And so I started thinking about how you could do it. And I thought, oh, well, if you have some people holding a board, and then you get on top, and then I was thinking, but then how do you balance? Because you need to put your hands away, because it's really difficult. And so then we tried a few things. We thought, okay, maybe you try with 2 people. Then we thought maybe the board needs like a pole to hold it. And I thought that won't be really nice. It'd be better if it's always just the people doing it. And then evolved the group of 8 men who are called the Surf Spirits. And so then I thought actually, they're not just there to manipulate the board, but really they are the ocean itself. So it started to provide quite a lot of interesting choreographic opportunities. And of course, the main thing was to make it feel like it was on water. And I think it's the thing we did in the first day is like, how can we hold the board and move the board so it feels like it's on water? And they just started to do that. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then we started playing, and then we wanted to get the board higher, but then Karina had no one to hold on to. So then we just decided to so then one of the guys got on top of the guy's shoulders so that he could be, so he's on his shoulders, so he's high enough so that she's high enough to hold onto him. So all these different ways of just solving, and this is like the ideas in the room, people just like, oh, if I just get higher, and then it starts to happen, then you start to find the freedom, and then it turned out to be a lovely world. And then Marco started thinking about what the Surf Spirits were and how they should look, and then that all evolved, and then it just, you start to take the audience through the experience of it. But then I wasn't really sure if what I was doing was right. So when I went to Hawaii, I decided to go on have a surf lesson. And with my bad hip and everything, I thought, I'd be amazed if I even stand up. But it's an incredible science, and when you get on the board itself, which is this enormous, 11-foot thing, which is so streamlined, and the moment you're lying down and you have your 5 steps on how to get up, and that wave is pushing you. It's just the most incredible, exhilarating. I actually had like a little cry afterwards because it's such a connection to the ocean and the power of it. And when you can actually balance on it and just feel that pull along. It's incredible. So I can't even imagine what those, I think they're crazy and they're going out there and they're just taking enormous waves. But I can see, I immediately got the addiction because immediately you want to go back and get the next wave. It's like, that's the immediate feeling. So then I understood where the culture comes from. It's actually it's a very deep-rooted culture, actually. It's a deep connection because I think people think of surfers as like, dudes and this whole, so blonde bleached culture, but actually there's a real connection to something that's very powerful that they want to connect with.
Could you tell us a little bit about what surfing the air and what it's like surfing with those guys carrying you around now that we've heard what real surfing is like?
Yes, I don't think he knows, but I couldn't walk for 4 days after I tried the first time. He knows I was crying every day. But I think it was, like I think you're a real magician because it's true. You really did the impossible possible. Like you were just talking about like how to go higher, and then you will just create it, and it will just happen. And yes, I have to say I was afraid. I was really nervous about it, but I think the real stars of the shows are those surfing spirits. They have worked so hard and so open to just experiment, to just have us on top of them and the board and try over and over and over again. I say that we will give them a gift card of a massage place after the performance because I think, they are the real stars of the show. But it's incredible. It's incredible to also learn the magic of the surfing world. I have to say that I'm actually fascinated. I can't swim, so I don't think I can try like you, but I have been watching all these documentaries and the power and the therapeutical feeling that these people have has been amazing to learn. Another section that I think is fantastic is the drowning section. How I feel like she's really drowning. She's really dying, and I think it's once again I think it's all the boys making it happen, and I think you will love that section. I think it's really magical. So
yeah, I just remember the first time we went all the way up. I was just like looking down. I was like, that's not water below. That is ground. And like Arthur said, like it is sort of like an addiction. Like after I'm done, I'm like, I have like an adrenaline rush. I'm like, oh, I kind of want to go do that again. Like I really want to take up surf lessons, and I might have to go to Hawaii on our next break because I want to go surfing.
You've got the shirt ready.
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
So, just as we're slowly wrapping up, could you guys talk a little bit about your characters? Because one of the things that is so fascinating is, how long is the dance? Is 35? You do feel like you live a person's life, and that's a really incredible feat. That you see the dancer, or you see the characters at different stages of their life, particularly you, Chandler. Could you talk about that, of watching the little you, and then watching you, and then watching Steven play the older you, and how you guys are tying that all together? I mean, it really is quite moving. So could you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, watching especially, I think, there's a few moments that the younger Ryan has where he's looking at the younger Blossom, and that part like almost makes me like I like cry almost every time. And then the other section later on where I rise up and watch my like the older version of myself die and walk off, like something about it just like really like gets me every time. It feels like every time I do this piece, it's like a journey, and I like go just to an amazing place. And yeah, I think because of how it's been like developed with the story, like just watching it sort of unfold, living it, watching it unfold again, and then going back into it, but sort of with an idea of being the same person with however many plus years of life is just something that is just unfathomable to me. So
It's beautiful. I feel that watching it, and watching your guys' performance in the studio recently, I definitely was emotionally swept as well. So very exciting.
And I just have to add that what's so interesting is that you can only do, I like to take advantage of what ballet companies have. And when like when Stanton said, oh, you can use the younger school, you can use the upper school, you can use, the character artists. And, in order to tell this kind of story, you need the village of people that it takes to make it happen. And then, so it is lovely to have the intergenerational story going across, because and it's only in a ballet company. If you were trying to do this like outside of a ballet company, you just wouldn't be able to afford it, first of all. But the fact that you have human beings as the resources is what's so fantastic. Because it's lovely to see and have the young cast in the room with the dancers who are at their peak and at their prime, to someone like Stephen who's had the career, who's looking back, but is still doing a duet with Karina. Like I just love that, and I love how that brings out the human in everyone. It's lovely.
Yeah, you've really brought something out of the children involved as well. I mean, I don't know if we've really touched on that, but the Academy is heavily involved. There's a cast of Academy students that grow into company dancers, and then, it is truly moving. Have you worked with children a lot in your career, or?
Not much, to be honest. I prefer to make work for children because I love children as an audience. They're the most honest audience, and you will always know if it's not good, because they just won't react or they'll look somewhere else. But and it's been really, really fascinating. These kids have been just fantastic and playful, and we had the HB2 boys create the material and then teach it to the younger boys, and then we've simplified it. So there's been this kind of like older brother relationship, and they've looked after them. It's just been really a lovely process just to find that little section and to try and make it, what it is. And it's very rewarding, and it's been totally fun.
The collaborative spirit is alive and well in Good Vibrations. So I'm so excited. I want to open it up, of course, for a Q&A at the end, because if anyone has any questions for these incredible artists, please feel free to join and in the conversation. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Yeah, go ahead.
The males have an extra effort in keeping that surfboard up, and what kind of comments and feedback did you get from the dancers when you're choreographing, where they're having to use their arms more than their legs?
Her question was just about what sort of feedback did Arthur get from the people who were doing the surfboard lifting, and what that was like for them, for their bodies, and et cetera.
Like Karina said and Chandler said, that they're complete heroes. So I was so nice to them because I just knew how difficult it was, and I just said, this is going to be so complicated and it's going to demand a lot of energy. So let's take it bit by bit by bit to work it out. Because there's also the actual surfboard, which is the other partner. So it's eight men and Karina and a surfboard, or sometimes 4 men on each surfboard and Karina or Chandler on. So there's a lot to deal with, and exchanges. And then also I wanted them to move, so I wanted to release some people from the board, so there was movement to go back to the board, so they just didn't feel like they were just kind of carrying something. Also, it's not interesting for the audience. So so we would rest, and then we would talk about it, and then we would rehearse sometimes with just the board without somebody on it. So the board was light, so they could work out the maneuvers of the board, and then Karina or Chandler would get on, and then to try it with them. So it's all in stages, take a rest. The rehearsals aren't all day long. You only get like maybe 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 hours a day. So they were okay. No one really complained, at least to me they didn't. But I do feel like I do want to buy them each a martini.
Dancers are infamous for complaining, and I didn't hear any other complaints, honestly.
No.
I would walk by the window and I'd say, oh my gosh, how are those guys doing? I never heard a peep from them in the dressing room. Normally, I can't just go, oh my God.
I have to say that they were very smart sharing the weight, so no one person has all the weight. Oh, it's a very even, and sometimes I would be like, I'm so sorry, is it too heavy? And they'll be like, no, like if we all 4 of us or all 8 of us working together, it doesn't sound as painful.
Anyone else have any other questions? Yes.
It sounds like you had a lot of the actual moves and steps and things after you came here and started working with the dancers. What was that like? How much did you know ahead that you wanted to do, and how much did you develop it with the actual dancers?
I'll just again repeat the question. How much of the material, it seems like a lot of the material was created in the studio. How much was created prior to the arrival, is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I never really make steps before. I mean, I might do, like I'll do a little bit. I think we had a day, I came here in March or something to cast the piece. And then I had to make something from my body so that the dancers could learn, and I thought, okay, here's maybe a little bit of the move. But I remember after thinking, oh, that was really not what it is. Because it's coming from my body. But the moment I can start to play with, with the dance and have a playful energy in developing the material, then it just starts to flow a lot more. But there'd be certain things, that we looked at, like especially with the surf spirits, which is obviously, the obvious thing of just like a wave and just like ripples. So we're thinking about the skeleton and how the skeleton can move and how you can flow, and about water and how that feels, and seaweed and all those things. And I mean, that's really what it is. And then the dynamism of it, how dynamic the ocean can be, and how the power of a wave. And there's certain images that I definitely wanted to bring in, because I wanted them to be strong. And there's this beautiful, we keep talking about it, but there's this beautiful advert for Guinness, which is like these very strong waves with horses in them. And I kept saying to them, even though you're thinking of that you are like water, but you also, there's almost like the power of a galloping horse, So it's so once you start to play with those things, then it just comes, and it's really fun.
Can I ask, has your process always involved improvisation, or is that something that a skill you've developed over the time, how to collaborate with dancers? How is that?
Yeah, it's a different. I feel like each piece has a different process, So for example, when I did something like the Metamorphosis, we looked at. We started to develop a language that has certain rules, and so when you're asking someone to be essentially an insect, we realized little things like you can't put the hand flat on the floor, flat down, because that's quite mammal to do that. But the moment you're up on your prongs, it starts to become more insect. So I really enjoy finding out like what the process is and like what the rules are to then make them and then to also break them. But there's never really like the same process. It'll always be a different way in. Sometimes, like if I can get the full cast, I love to play a lot of games. But of course, in this situation, you only get like a certain amount of people to kick off the first session. So you can't do the whole bonding thing. And also, ballet companies already bonded. It's like they know each other. But if with another company, if I'm working with a group of people who don't know each other, I'll spend at least 2 or 3 days just playing games in the room, just to get everybody relaxed and to feel like they can create in front of each other. And then you start to develop the tasks. And then the tasks, they're always different. There was like when we did Bjork Ballet, there was a very different set of rules, because we were looking at lyrics of the song, different concepts. There was a whole different way that I wanted people to connect. Because the music was electronic and there was electricity. So there's all sorts of different elements that you bring in.
It's wonderful. Do you have any other questions? Yes, Jean.
Is there more than one cast? It looks like this is so challenging to ask more than one cast to do this piece. Would be very.
Is there more than one cast?
Yes, so for Ryan and Blossom, there are 2 casts. So it would be Jacqueline Lawn and it would be Sievert. in his Ryan.
Yeah, as always in the company, we have lots of people waiting in the wings and covers and this and that. But yeah, there are a lot of moving pieces in this piece. Yes, sir.
So I'm curious, when you put this together, designing the costumes, that is a key feature when looking at the beautiful dances. So who designs the costumes? So is it done in triplicates? Or could you
In
have
terms of the
that?
actual production, it depends on the actor or the dancer and what it is that they're doing. If we can, we'll reuse the same costume, but oftentimes we'll have two.
It takes a long time to put it together.
It does take a long time. Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying that, yeah, if wherever we can, we'll duplicate. But it is a lot of work, and there are a lot of different pieces. So if it's possible to reuse something like, for example, his shirt, then we'll do that.
Is that done in Houston or?
We've made everything here. There's one or two little bits and pieces that we put together in my studio in LA. But Sandra, who I think is here somewhere, she has been incredible in running the shop and making all of my crazy ideas happen as quickly as possible.
There's a lot involved fittings.
It is a lot. It's a lot of fun, and like they said, everybody's been really amicable through the process, and it's a collaboration in so many senses of the word. So,
That's very interesting.
I just want to.
That's very interesting.
thank you.
Yes, and I just want to explain to the audience, because maybe Marco's not saying, but actually, if you look at that shirt, that design is, the design on the shirt is designed by Marco, which is then silk screen. Do you want to tell them what it is?
Yeah, it's well, basically, one of the themes that we're trying to bring throughout the whole piece was this idea of, like, coming from the 60s, we were talking about all the different, cults and spiritual groups that were, thriving at the time, and so much emphasis on Eastern practices and, third eye, and we didn't really want to delve into anything specifically. We wanted to sort of create our own spiritual, language, and so I did a lot of freehand work on the dancers, where we would put them into leotards, and I would begin to draw third eye, different sacred geometry kind of inspired motifs on each of them, and those became sort of like the print language of everything. So anywhere you see Ryan, you're going to see, whether he's in the hospital bed or whether he's a child, you're going to see him in this print, his surfboard. And, each of these, when you meet the casts in the cult, you're going to see each of them with their own sort of specific design. And all of that was done here on the actual dancers. And then we took it back to LA, had it all embroidered. And now we're bringing it all back and putting it onto the costumes and embellishing it from there. So it's been a really fun process of creating it. And like you said, it's different every time. So this has all been, concepts and processes that we've developed based on the piece, based on where we are, based on who we have, and coming up with it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, so I'll just add to that, to just the joy of working with Marco, because he puts so much thought into every character and every design. If you look at the Blossom costume, so there's actually a beautiful embroidered floral print, which is, like a blossom, but also Marco had proposed, this, and this will actually be dip dyed soon. So it'll be, the bottom will be like a deeper burnt kind of orangey red, so it'll become like a sunrise.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, we wanted to make her the sun. She is the ultimate, piece of his life that he never got to have fulfilled, and so she represents those colors. And we were talking about, like you said, Hawaii, California, surfing, and the idea of a gradient being a very sort of tropical motif. You have the sunsets, you have the way the water changes colors, and so you're going to see a lot of that gradiating happening throughout the piece as well.
Yeah, but I really love it when there's a real metaphorical logic to the character, and she's the inspiration, she is the sun, and so the idea of creating her like a sunrise, which I think is just such a beautiful metaphor, because that's the one thing that happens. There's one thing in life that happens, which still happens, thankfully, is that the sun rises, and if you ever sit down to watch that as a human being, it's one of the most beautiful things to experience: the sun rising or the sun setting, just the colours and the power of it. So I really love that she carries that, and that's what's on her body to represent her, to feed the audience.
When you first meet her on the surfboard, you'll see that her colors they sort of gradate down into the surfboard. So she is this glowing orb of color, and you have the same thing going on here with him when he's sort of like the earth going into the sky. So we have these two different elements trying to constantly connect and never really getting an opportunity to.
Look at what's up there and
This is the evolution of Blossom. Could you talk about that briefly?
Yeah, so you see Baby Blossom over there. That's an old surfboard. We switched it out for a new one. But like I was saying before, just the concept of this image of her that he has as a child, that stays with him, whether this memory is real or fabricated in his mind. We were talking about how if you meet someone and they talk about an old friend, they say, they always wore this hat, and they may have worn that hat once, but that's how they remember him, and that's a part of who they are to them. So even when you meet the children when you meet his friends as children, and then when you meet them as adults, like they're all wearing sort of morphed versions of the same costume, and the same is true for her. And as you get closer and closer to that point where he gets to meet her, she becomes kind of more and more deified. And then, hopefully at the end they'll get a chance to dance.
Well, I feel I can't go on after that, after watching you two get creatively excited about this piece. I am honestly so excited for all of you to engage with this work. We are truly so fortunate to have these artists with us, and I think they're bringing out such special things of our company. So it's been a privilege and an honor for me to sit with you all and discuss with you all this premiere, and I hope to see you all there. I have to say, shows go from September 22nd to October 2nd, so please tell your friends, please come out, do not miss it. It is going to be an absolute joy, a treat. So thank you so much, thank you to our guests, and thank you for coming tonight.